Good evening, guys. This evening I would like to make a video about getting out of your apartment lease contract in the instance that your landlord is violating the conditions of the lease by failing to uphold their end of the bargain. Before we get started with the video, I would like to say that I am an attorney licensed in the state of Texas and also in the state of Wisconsin. This video is going to focus on Texas law and the use of the Texas Apartment Association Lease, which is used by the majority of management companies here in the Houston area and I believe in the state of Texas. I would also like to state that this video is for informational purposes. It is not meant to be a substitute for legal advice. However, the legal advice that I shouldn't say advice, the legal scenario that I outlay is actually a scenario that occurs quite frequently, and I advise in this situation also quite frequently. This question came up today. It came up maybe also a couple of months ago. In one instance, we had a situation where the client, he had a pregnant wife, and their apartment smelled like marijuana that was coming through the vents. And then today I received a phone call because the client does not have hot water in his apartment, and I believe the gas is not working. So let's jump right into this situation, and I'm going to hopefully shed light on how to get out of your lease without any negative ramifications. Because as you know, well, maybe you don't know, but in Houston right now, having a broken lease or an eviction on your record is very difficult to rent after that point without a cosigner. So let's jump right into it. So what I have on my screen right now is the typical Texas Apartment Association apartment lease contract. And when you basically sign the lease for your apartment, this is typically what you are signing. So the provision that we're going to focus on in the lease is going to be in section 31. So I'm going to go down to section 31 and we're going to discuss section 31. I'm going to zoom in a little bit on this. Okay, so as you can see, section 31 states our responsibilities, meaning the apartment complex's responsibilities. Generally, will act with customary diligence to A, keep common areas reasonably clean, subject to paragraph 25. Excuse me. Now, I've never had a situation where a common area caused any issues, but I guess it could, and so we're not going to really focus on that for this video. Subsection B, maintain fixtures, hot water, heating, and air conditioning equipment. Subsection C, substantially comply with all applicable laws regarding safety, sanitation, and fair housing, and make all reasonable repairs subject to your obligation to pay for damages for which you're liable. The time, manner, method, and means of performing maintenance and repairs, including whether or which vendors to use, are within our sole discretion. Okay, so now, basically what they're saying is that if any of those items are violated, if any of those violations are violated, whether it's A, B, C, or D, that triggers 31.2, which is your remedy. Now, one thing that you must realize is that the time, manner, method, and means of performing maintenance and repairs, including whether or which vendors to use, are within our sole discretion. That is somewhat true because basically the statute, Texas Property Code Section 92.056, states that a reasonable time is roughly 7 days. So I haven't run into the situation where we have to worry about what's reasonable because basically once I start sending out these letters, everything starts working out. Either the client gets a new apartment or they're allowed to terminate their lease. So let's take a look at section 31.2, which are your remedies. Your remedies, if we violate any of the above, you may possibly terminate this lease and exercise other remedies under Texas Property Code Section 92.056 by following this procedure. Number A, letter A. All rent must be current and you must make a written request for repair or remedy of the condition. after which we'll have a reasonable time for repair or remedy. B, if we fail to do so, you must make a second written request for the repair or remedy to make sure that there has been no miscommunication between us, after which we'll have a reasonable time to repair or remedy. And 3, if the repair or remedy still hasn't been accomplished within that reasonable time period, you may immediately terminate this lease by giving us a final written notice. You also may exercise other statutory remedies, including those under Texas Property Code Section 92.0561. Now, so let's take a look at this. So, all rent must be current. A lot of people who are from different states confuse the fact that that they don't have to pay their rent if something's wrong with their apartment. Texas is a state that's actually pro-landlord. So here you have to make sure you have to pay your rent, then fight about it later. So before invoking this provision, make sure that your rent is current 100%. Not missing $10, $5, 5 cents. Make sure that your rent is 100% current. Now, the first letter that you want to send, you want to let them know that you are invoking your remedies under this 31.2 of the lease. Now, if you look at section 31.3, this is a little bit different than instead of, this is going to give you an alternative, and I'm going to read this because the thing about it is that I'm going to tell you how I approach it, which is actually a little bit more durable than this in case you have to go to court, small claims court, and prove your situation. So 31.3 says request by mail. Instead of giving the 2 written requests referred to above, you may give us 1 request by certified mail, return receipt requested by registered mail, or by any trackable mail or delivery method through the Postal Service or a private delivery service, after which we'll have a reasonable time to repair or remedy. Reasonable time accounts for the nature of the problem and the reasonable availability of materials, labor, and utilities. Your rent must be current when you make any request. We'll refund security deposits and prorated rent as required by law. Okay, now, so my thing is that, of course, this says that we can do 1 certified mail. However, my idea is that we actually send certified mail for the notices that are required, the first and second notice required under 31.2, because one request by mail is great, but it looks a lot better if you come to court and you've made 2 requests. So what we're going to do right now is I'm going to switch it over to the property code, and we're going to take a look at 92.056. 92.056 is the landlord liability and tenant remedies, notice and time for repair. A landlord's liability under this section is subject to the section 92.052B regarding conditions that are caused by a tenant, and section 92.054 regarding conditions that are insured casualties. We're not going to worry about 92.052B or 92.054 because those are not really what we're focusing on here. We're talking about specifically the landlord's liability under this section, not subject to the other 2 sections that they're mentioning. A landlord is liable to the tenant provided this subchapter if the tenant has given the landlord notice to repair or remedy a condition by that notice to the person to whom or to the place where the tenant's rent is normally paid. Number 2, the condition materially affects the physical health or safety of an ordinary tenant. Number 3, the tenant has given the landlord a subsequent written notice to repair or remedy the condition after a reasonable time to repair or remedy the condition following the notice given under subsection 1, or the tenant has given the notice under subsection 1 by sending that notice by certified mail, return receipt requested by registered mail, or by any other form that allows tracking of delivery from the United States Postal Service or of a private delivery service. So these provisions right here that I just read are basically very much similar to what TAA has incorporated in 31.2. Now 4, the landlord has a reasonable time to repair or remedy the condition after the landlord received the tenant's notice under subdivision 1, and if applicable, the tenant's subsequent notice under subdivision 3. So that's the 2 letters. Okay, the landlord has not, now this is when you can start thinking about breaking your lease. The landlord has not made a diligent effort to repair or remedy the condition after the landlord received the tenant's notice under subdivision 1, and if applicable, the tenant's notice under subdivision 3, and the tenant was not delinquent in payment of rent at the time of any notice required under this subsection was given. Now, number C talks about some notice requirements. Um, Basically, this is saying that you can send the notice if obviously if you have a big managed apartment complex, you can address this letter to the management, the manager, the on-site property manager, and it's deemed that the landlord has received service. So you can send this letter to the manager. Now, determining section D is about the what is a reasonable time. So here, for the purposes of subsection B3 or 4, in determining whether a period of time is a reasonable time to repair or remedy a condition, there is a rebuttable presumption that 7 days is a reasonable time. To rebut that presumption, the date on which the landlord receives the tenant's notice, the severity and nature of the condition, and the reasonable availability of materials and labor and of utilities from a utility company must be considered. Okay, so what this means is that when they said here that let's see, after which we'll have a reasonable time to repair or remedy, and it also says after which we'll have a reasonable time to repair or remedy. Reasonable time accounts for the nature of the problem, reasonability, availability of materials, labor, and utilities. This is also kind of mirrors this subsection right here. So what a rebuttable presumption means is that if you send this letter to the manager and she gets it and it's deemed received, they have 7 days after they receive it to get it done. If they cannot get the repair done within 7 days, the burden is on them to prove why couldn't you have got it done in 7 days. Now, and of course, they'll take into consideration. Let's just say a transformer blows up and maybe it shorts the breaker out and the transformer is fixed, but the breaker's not working. And I'm not an electrician, so that may not ever occur. But let's just say it required a third party like a utility company to come in and do some work, and then it goes longer than 7 days. That's not the landlord's fault. You'd probably lose that in court if you wanted to terminate the lease because it extended past 7 days past the landlord's. That was out of their hands. They couldn't do anything about that. So what you want to do is you want to make sure that you are reasonable when you send this letter. So now in the case that I mentioned where the guy was smelling the marijuana coming through his vents and he had reported it several times, we sent in a letter, and when we sent in this letter, the landlord received the first copy of the letter, and with the first copy of the letter, the way I cited these provisions, section 31.2 and section 31.3, request by mail, they basically got him a new apartment. Typically, when that first letter goes out, they will typically try to move you to another property or move you to another apartment on the property or fix the problem. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to show you a little bit of a letter that I sent. I'm going to keep the client's information confidential, but I'm going to show you how the letter is structured. Now, this client didn't have enough money to hire me to be his attorney, so I wrote the letter and he took the letter and sent it himself. So this is why the voicing is referring to I, because it's not me writing as a lawyer. If you have enough money to hire me as a lawyer, then I can take care of this situation for you. If you need a copy of this letter, or, well, not this particular letter, but a form, I'm going to put that link in the description below. And if you happen to watch this video before I get the link there, you can always text me at 281-773-7339. Again, that's 281-773-7339 to get a form letter that you can use to write your landlord. But you just have to make sure that the landlord has breached their duty to provide a habitable apartment due to some circumstances that's not in your power to switch, or basically solely their responsibility. So here's the letter that I wrote in the case that the marijuana was coming through the vents. So I start off saying, I'm writing this letter to inform you that your company has breached its duty of providing a safe environment and does not materially affect that does not materially affect the health and safety of my family. Specifically, I have notified management and law enforcement on several occasions by phone of the overwhelming stench of marijuana coming through the vents of my apartment, making it impossible for my family and I to breathe easily. My wife, who is currently pregnant, and my 2 children are especially suffering. At the time of this writing, nothing has been done to resolve the critical problem. My rental lease agreement states the following duty of your management company and my remedy of termination, which I intend to act by writing this first letter. And then I say this, I cite the provision, and it says generally, which is section 31 2.a, which is the condition that where all of this stuff starts, which basically tells us to write the letter and the rent is paid. Generally, will act with customary diligence to C, substantially comply with all applicable laws regarding safety, sanitation, and fair housing. So having marijuana come through the vents is arguably a violation of safety and sanitation. His wife could receive a contact high. The kids could be exposed to marijuana. There's arguments whether or not marijuana is safe or not, but no one wants their kids or pregnant wife breathing this stuff in. And then it also states 31.2, your remedies. If we violate any of the above, you may possibly terminate this lease and exercise other remedies under Texas Property Code. So now, in closing, I request that these problems be repaired or remedied as soon as possible. Please provide a written explanation to me if there will be any delay in fixing these problems or that you are unable to do so, which you have stated multiple times. So in this instance, he had went down there personally to the property manager and they failed to do anything about it. And so this is why we put that in there. An adequate remedy for my family and I would be to have our lease transferred to another unit. And in this case, my client did not want to necessarily terminate his lease because he's in the process of buying a house. He just needs somewhere to stay, and he didn't really want to uproot his family. So we offered to just transfer him instead of terminate the lease. If you have any questions or concerns, please contact me. I need to actually remove my client's information from the bottom of there. I didn't realize his name was there. I'm going to black that section out in the video. But what I'm saying here is that this is how you want to set up your letter. And once you send this letter, typically everything gets done. Now, in the event that they didn't fix it in this case, after we would wait 7 to 10 days, and then we would send a second notice. And I always recommend sending that second notice by certified mail. Now, if they do not fix it after that second notice, which then you wait another 7 to 10 days. Then you send a letter stating your final notice and your desire to terminate the lease. So again, I'm going to walk through it again. What you want to do is you want to send the first letter, certified mail, stating the provision 31.2 that my rent is current. I'm putting this letter in writing. I'm sending it certified mail. Give them 7 to 10 days to fix it. They don't fix it in 7 to 10 days. Send another letter under subsection B. Now, some people will argue, hey, we could have just sent one certified mail under 31.3. I say send 2 letters under section 31.2, both certified mail, because the more information you go to court with, the more the judge is going to be on your team. Now, if I remember correctly, we also fax this letter as well, because the fax machine creates a written receipt, a printed receipt when you fax. So I believe we also fax this letter as well. I like using the fax machine. Some people think the fax machine is old-fashioned, but you get an immediate receipt. And again, the more you can take to court with you, the more the landlord will be in the hot seat. So just remember to like this video, share and subscribe. If you have any questions about any landlord-tenant problems, you can give me a call, comment below in the description, send me an email, and I'll do the best to see if we can sort those problems out. Again, thank you for watching this video, and the best of luck to everyone.